Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin in Cameroon, where local authorities say at least 30 people, including women and children, have been killed during clashes over land between neighboring communities in the southwest region of the country. A spokesperson for the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon said the fight between Oliti and Mesaga Ecole groups in Akwaya was very violent. The church released pictures that showed dead bodies lying on the ground. According to the communication officer of Akwaya district, the violence started when attackers stormed a funeral ceremony in the village of Bakinjo on Saturday and continued on Sunday. He adds that people were burnt in their homes while others were beheaded in the attack. A member of parliament, Aka Martin Tioga, also said the attackers promised to return in 2 days. However, he adds that the investigations into the killings would take time as the area is a remote place. Well, June 20 every year is recognized as World Refugee Day. This year, however, the UN agency in charge of refugees, the UNHCR, is marking the day in Lagos a week later for a very special reason. The Lagos State Governor would be signing the Cities with Refugees Declaration. Our correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, reports.
Here in this hall are men and women who play impactful roles in providing for a fraction of the over 30 million refugees in the world, residents in Nigeria, and making them feel safe and wanted. The Honorable Federal Commissioner of National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons informs on efforts made by the Commission in this regard.
We'll continue to strengthen our response towards refugees and persons of concerns. Recently, our Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Hajja Sadiya Omar Farouk, approved for the infusion of persons of concerns into the National Social Investment Program, the JIP, the N-Power, and also the N-Skills. And we'll continue to intervene, partnering with whole of society.
Head of UNHCR in Nigeria follows closely with her message on the agency's work, which supports that of the NCFRMI.
And create protective environments for refugees. The role of cities and towns and countries in creating inclusive communities and promoting hope for people forced to flee their homes has never been more important. Local authorities and other local actors in urban and rural settings, including local community leaders, traditional community governance institutions, are often the first responders to refugee situations.
Following several speeches from different governments and international agencies, the guest speaker, Director General of the Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, Professor Mohammed Taufik Ladan, takes a surgical look into the reason refugees exist, why they're not the problem, and why everyone in Africa may be a potential refugee.
The people forced to flee are not the problem, because I am always having this troubling perception. When people see the statistics, Your Excellency, everybody thinks that the refugees and asylum seekers are the problem. But I want us to have another reflection. Are the people forced to flee, are they the problem, creating global crisis? How can people being forced to flee be the problem? The refugees are not the problem, Your Excellency, in the distinguished audience. The problem rather has to do with the causes for the fleeing.
The Governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, leverages on the presentation of the guest speaker to emphasize how every Nigerian carries the solution to the problem of refugees and internally displaced persons.
We here are the problem, including myself. We, the senators, your leaders, your community heads, who refuse to agree to whatever form of disputes might occur, because indeed there will be dispute, there will be disagreement. But normally what should happen is that in whatever form of disagreement, we must be able to resolve them. Because indeed not resolving them leads to issues of war, strife, and we can see all of the displacement. And so people that are seeking, those refugees are not the problem, but we that are in position, that we need to listen to ourselves, understand, that we're the same coin, we're probably just seeing the coin from different sides.
He then puts pen to a very important document, the Cities with Refugees Declaration, in 3 copies.
We all
And with that, Lagos becomes the 282nd city with refugees in the world. There are plans to sign up more Nigerian cities in the near future as focus continues on this year's theme for the World Refugee Day, Right to Seek Safety. Amarachi Ubani, Channels Television News.
To health matters, the pathogen Helicobacter pylori has been identified as the cause of peptic ulcer and other gastric disorders. Well, this is according to a group of medical scientists under the umbrella of African Helicobacter and Microbiota Initiative. The aim of the group is for Africans to solve Africa's health challenges. Our correspondent, Timothy Crown Aderibigbe, reports.
Stomach ulcers are thought by many to be caused by irregular eating habits, but scientists have implicated a bacterium, Helicobacter pylori, in this painful condition, as well as several other gastric disorders. It may not be as popular as COVID-19, Ebola, malaria in this part of the world. That's in spite of its presence in over 50% in human population globally, with varying levels of severity. Some research has been conducted on this disease in Europe, but now some African medical experts are studying it independently due to the African peculiarities. They come together from across the continent under the group African Helicobacter and Microbiota Study Initiative.
Helicobacter pylori is a gram-negative bacterium that infects and colonizes the human gut. The pathogen has been implicated in an array of gastric disorders, including peptic ulcer diseases, gastritis, gastric mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue lymphoma, and gastric adenocarcinoma. It was discovered by Warren and Marshall in 1982.
The incidence of H. pylori infections, as it is also called, is said to be as high as 80% on the continent. And these experts are certain that localizing the research will provide needed continent-wide solutions.
I know of a case of infection that was taken to Harley Street in the UK. And Harley Street is one of the best places in the UK. And the person came back, still not well treated. And when he went to loot and got to the people who are Africans, they gave the right kind of treatment. And within 1 week, what we took to Harley Street was treated in Nigeria, which means Africans will know the problem of African better.
We gathered here to offer some solutions customized to African countries. For example, the economy in Africa is different from the economy in Europe and America. Also, the antibiotics present here may not be the same like in America or in Europe. Some antibiotics are available in America and Europe and they are not available here. So some antibiotics are effective in our population in Africa that may not be effective in Europe and America.
Considering its danger, the researchers are planning to engage locals rather than wait till cases are reported.
Any infection that will cause cancer may be termed a killer disease. And even if peptic ulcer may not kill directly, but the complications of it that H. pylori causes may kill the patient too. For example, upper gastrointestinal bleeding. Those who have peptic ulcer disease from H. pylori may have upper GI bleeding, in which they may vomit blood, stool blood, and this is really life-threatening.
This is a good start. We have a long way to go. There's much to understand about this bacteria, particularly in our context in Africa. So hopefully it won't be too long before the community sees the benefit. But I think it starts with understanding what we are dealing with, which up until this point we really don't know. We have very sparse data, and our work and our mission is to try and understand this better.
Members of the board are sworn in under various subunits of epidemiology, diagnosis, indications and prevention, as well as treatment working groups. Timothy Crown Aderibigbe, Channels Television News.
Over in the Horn of Africa, where continuous fighting by the Tigrayan forces might hopefully become a thing of the past as diplomatic negotiations are set to hold. The Ethiopian government says it has created a 7-member committee to hold talks with Tigrayan forces in a bid to end the 19-month civil war. It is to be chaired by the country's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Demeke Mekonnen. Ethiopia's Justice Minister, Gediwon Timotheos, who is also a member of the committee, says the governing party would only agree to the African Union leading the peace process. Correspondents say this is a potential stumbling block for negotiations, as Tigrayan forces have criticized the AU's efforts and have said they want the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta to mediate. A senior civil affairs officer from the United Nations mission in South Sudan has called for an urgent healing and reconciliation process in the country's southern unity state. This is where gruesome attacks on communities have resulted in deaths, beheadings, sexual violence and abductions. The official also asked that perpetrators should be held accountable following a recent spate of attacks in that area.
The mission has always called for accountability on perpetrators, and we believe that this is something that should not be left to go like that. Let the committee come investigate, and let whoever is culpable be held responsible and accountable for what transpired in Southern Unity. You will recall that this is about the second time that Southern Unity is witnessing this kind of problem. Between 2016 and 2018, there were serious issues also in Southern Unity, which caused the mission to focus on that area and deploy several programs and activities to help people heal and reconcile. Those activities were ongoing and we're beginning to achieve some degree of success before all of this transpired again, and it's taking everyone back to square one. So.
Staying with South Sudan, at least 25 people, including government soldiers, have been killed during a cattle raid in the volatile Warrap state in the central region of the country. According to the Information Minister, Ring Deng, 18 soldiers and 7 civilians were killed in total during the clash with heavily armed youth. Among them was the senior military officer and a former county commissioner. 7 soldiers and 6 civilians were also wounded during the incident. However, there are fears that the death toll could rise as high as 65, but Mr. Ring has refuted this claim. He says the incident occurred as a result of a misunderstanding when the soldiers tried to recover stolen cows from youth. Cattle raids and revenge attacks have killed thousands of people in South Sudan since their independence in 2011. South Africa's main power company has announced that there is a significant risk of more power cuts in its service if an ongoing workers' strike does not come to an end. In a hastily arranged emergency briefing, Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter says the new power cuts, called load shedding in South Africa, could mean up to 6 hours without service a day. Workers are demanding a 10% wage increase, more than what the power utility, which relies on government bailouts, is willing to offer. They first downed tools over a week ago, plunging the nation into a power crisis in the middle of winter. The country's main power supplier has been struggling to provide the service for years due to historic infrastructure and funding problems. After a rowdy session which failed to produce new leadership in 2021, the Pan-African Parliament has opened today with elections as the main agenda. Speaking at the opening of the ordinary session of the Fifth Parliament, the chairman of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, appealed to the members of the parliament to look beyond the election and see the bigger picture of developing the continent collectively. New members were sworn in this Tuesday, and the Bureau, as well as President and Vice President's positions, are expected to be filled after Wednesday's elections.
The last attempt by the Pan-African Parliament to elect new leaders was quite disgraceful.
There are 5 regions in the country. The 3 regions have already led PAP. Now the outstanding regions is Southern and Northern. It is our turn. We've never led a PAP since its inception. And we are saying a rotational principle must be implemented.
The man who sat in the saddle for 9 years, Honorable Roger Nkododang from Cameroon, says the problem goes beyond just rotational leadership.
The problem of rotation for me is not a problem. But what the problem come? The problem come that the head of state in Malabo in 2014 take the decision in the assembly to make a rotation. And it's only problem for ratify Malabo Protocol, and then we can get.
After the aborted election, the African Union Executive Council has now instructed the Parliament that candidates be restricted to regions which have not produced leaders before. The AU Commission chairperson Musa Faki Mehmet himself came to open this session.
Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, there will be no winners and defeated ones, those who have lost, but we need that sense of reason to prevail and have fair play and the victory of Africa that we want. I want to call upon you to vote tomorrow in order to carry out your electoral duty and open a new page in the life of your institution and the forward march of our continental organization in order to allow the ideals of Pan-Africanism to triumph, which has been so dear to our founding fathers.
Since Tanzania from the east, Chad and Cameroon from Central, as well as Nigeria from West Africa have held the position, Southern and Northern Africa are next. We see no North African candidates so far, but there are 2 candidates from Southern Africa, Yeremia Chihana from Malawi and former Vice President Fortune Charumbira from Zimbabwe. 4 vice presidents are to be picked and Nigeria has a candidate.
Yes, I have been nominated for Vice President in the last session. We have to go through the nomination again. But there are certain things we need to take into consideration. Nigeria is going for election in February. If we are able to strike a balance with the Anglophone countries to accept the fact that someone can come and do the remaining residue of the unexpired period, then I will be too happy to go on. But if by going in now to spend just 8 months is going to spoil the chance of the Anglophone country, I should be able to make the sacrifice of leaving the place for somebody who will take the whole period of 3 years.
I hope, inshallah, I hope that this time we will go for election and we will go for a complete bureau so we can function. I'm going for the woman caucus actually because I believe that gathering all African women together, they can do something for all the African people.
Wednesday definitely promises much intrigue as the leader of the Malawi delegation insists the Malawian candidate Chihana was not chosen by the Southern Caucus. Hopefully the leadership and other bureau positions will be filled with much less drama across regions. From Midrand near Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Well, the heads of Libya's 2 rival legislative chambers have met in Geneva for negotiations that are aimed at restoring a UN-led election process that fell apart last December. Agreement on national elections is representing a big step towards stopping another bout of warfare in Libya and helping to end a decade of chaos and conflict. Both bodies are recognized under the UN-approved 2015 Libyan political agreement as the 2 legislative bodies, but they have been in direct confrontation with each other for most of the period since Libya split between eastern and western factions in 2014. Parliament Speaker Aguila Saleh and High State Council head Khalid al-Meshri arrived in Geneva on Tuesday morning and sat stiffly separated by the United Nations Libya advisor Stephanie Williams. In the meantime, a top UN political affairs official has stressed the importance of holding elections in Libya during a Security Council meeting. And she says it's the only path to settle the disagreement over the democratic legitimacy of all Libyan institutions. The Under-Secretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, told the Council that continued political divisions are contributing to a tense security environment in and around Tripoli.
We are firmly convinced that elections are the only path to settle the disagreements over the democratic legitimacy of all Libyan institutions. Continued political divisions are contributing to a tense security environment in and around Tripoli. The issue of the executive is yet to be resolved. As armed groups continue to position themselves in support of either Mr. Dabeba or Mr. Bashaga, the risk of escalation increases. I reiterate the United Nations' readiness to facilitate dialogue between Mr. Dabeba and Mr. Bashaga. On the economic front, the partial shutdown of Libya's oil sector continues. Since 16 April, the shutdown has reduced Libyan oil exports by 1/3 and cost the country $3.1 billion in lost revenue. In addition, the disagreement over the control and use of public funds that triggered the partial shutdown continues and could lead to further oil field closures in the near term.
And finally, on the program, let's head over to Sudan to meet the first Sudanese woman to participate in an African Championships on martial arts. After winning bronze, she is preparing for the 2024 Olympics in Paris, hoping to be Sudan's first wrestler to make it to the Olympics, despite some suggesting this is a sport for men.
Patricia Al-Hajj grew up watching her grandfather wrestle in Sudan's Nuba Mountains, where since centuries wrestling is practiced by local communities. Years later, Hajj has become the first Sudanese woman with a shot at the Paris 2024 Olympics. Wrestling represents an important element in the cultural identity of the Sudanese living in Nuba Mountains, where young people exhibit their strength during the harvest season. Friends used to wonder and ask her why she chose wrestling.
Some people tell me wrestling is difficult, and why did you choose this field? It entails violence. I tell them wrestling is not difficult. You may say it as difficult, but it's not beating each other. It has rules and practices. Even when my friends ask me why I chose wrestling, I told them because I inherited the practice from my grandfather. They tell me it's difficult, but I say it's not difficult at all. It's easy.
After winning a bronze medal in an African championship, she's now training ahead of the Paris 2024 Olympics. Sudan is struggling with a political deadlock and an unprecedented economic crisis as a result of a coup carried out by the country's military rulers last year. Amid the political conflict and uncertainty, Hajj's coach Mustafa Hamad Ali says there's little support offered to ambitious athletes like her.
She chose wrestling. Many people will say that wrestling is for men, not for women. But wrestling is not only for men. Wrestling is an Olympic sport that can be for men, women, and everyone.
The president of the Sudanese Wrestling Federation, Allah Gabu Sulaiman Kabo, had been given a grant for a global development initiative.
She has a grant from the Olympic Solidarity to participate in a very long training of 2 years in Nigeria with world champions or the Nigerian champions, and this will help her in the Paris Olympics 2024.
Al-Hajj believes the sport is not gender biased, encouraging women to take up the sports.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde. Bye for now.